Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 21st episode of A Couple Takes on MS. This is Dan Digman.
And hi, this is Jennifer Digman.
And we want to welcome you all to the new year. This will be actually the second show after the start of 2018.
2018 and our 21st episode. And I'm waxing nostalgic about my 21st birthday. 21 was a good number. It's a good year. Sorry.
It truly was a great year.
Yes, it was a great year. Anywho, what do you want to talk about today, Dan?
Well, what we're talking about today, and this is really the perspective of, a couple takes on MS. We have I have relapsing remitting MS. Jennifer has
secondary progressive.
And we're looking at this, and we're talking about employment and multiple sclerosis and disability. I think this is something that that I'm really questioning at this point. Just slight background: the intent is not to tell you about me losing my job late last year, but it's the sense that at this point in time, I'm applying for another job. I worked at the same place for nearly 18 years. Actually, today it was 18 years ago that I started at this job, and it's a question now. I mean, obviously, here is just a slight backstory. I started at Central Michigan University in January, and like a month and a half later, on Valentine's Day of February 14th, I was diagnosed with MS.
And what year was that?
That was in 2000.
2000, so that was before the advent of the Americans with Disabilities Act?
No, because...
Okay, yes, so the ADA existed, and you felt comfortable to disclose your diagnosis.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is MS is not a disease you have to disclose to your employer.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting piece of information.
And as I understand it, but you did not, at the time, I don't think you do, but you don't have to disclose the fact that you have MS to your employer. And so I was afraid to do that, as when there was the thought that potentially the causes of my symptoms might be multiple sclerosis. And I was scared because obviously start a job on January 3rd, not knowing, and I wasn't going to say anything until I had a definitive diagnosis. But at that point, being diagnosed, I was diagnosed on Valentine's Day. I went into work the very next day and talked to my supervisor, my boss, if you will, and told her everything about having multiple sclerosis. And the first thing she said when I told her, she was like, "What can we do to help?" And at that point in time, I was in an office on the second floor, and they would have moved me downstairs if I needed it. And the university was very supportive of me. And so, and everybody knew I had multiple sclerosis at the university. I mean, I made no secret about it.
And you still make no secret about it.
I make no secret.
You are very powerful, as we've talked about here on our radio show, we're very active advocates for the MS community, ourselves included, and we work very hard advocating at a local, state, national level. And so I think you're continuing your story. You talked with your boss back right when you were diagnosed. And sir, you are correct. And this is just a side note. the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed in 1990. So when you had your diagnosis, when again did you say that was?
Since February 2000, so it's been about 10 years.
Yeah. And so your boss was very supportive.
Very supportive, and
so that fear that people who are newly diagnosed, they may not want to disclose their MS. And each individual boss and each individual situation is, their own. I know, in full disclosure, I do not work. When I was diagnosed back in 1997, I went straight away and told my boss as well, because that was a devastating, huge.
And what did your boss tell you? What did your boss say?
They were very accommodating, and they said that they would do whatever they had to do to help me. But again, full disclosure, 5 years of my diagnosis, I could no longer walk or work, and I was back living with my parents. And so I haven't worked in a number of years, and I am on disability because of my multiple sclerosis.
And that leads us to this question I have. I mean, so yeah, I can't hide the fact that I have multiple sclerosis. I mean, we have the blog, we're doing our radio show, we're very public about it. So
never mind the fact that orange is your favorite color.
And orange is my favorite color.
Coincidental, because orange is the color of the National MS Society.
Exactly.
Sorry, I sidetracked you.
You're good. You're fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it just got me thinking about MS awareness treats and things that I took to the office. But this is where we're going with this, and this is my question. So now, as I'm applying for jobs, and you do everything online, and there's a thing then when there's after you fill out all your application, it really shocked me that when you do like the secondary thing, I don't think you necessarily have to fill it out.
These things are like forms that you're filling out online.
Forms online, or I imagine if I actually went into an office and had to fill out a paper form. But it's a question, where it's talking about race, gender, age, and everything. Those that you can leave blank. But the one question then becomes disability. Do you have a disability? Me? No. I'm the one where, we go out, people look at you. You're in the wheelchair.
Heck yeah, I have a disability.
And they look at me, and I'm one of those, and everybody out there, you know who you are when people say, "Oh, but you don't look sick," because nobody thinks that I have multiple sclerosis if you actually just looked at me.
You're often, I've heard you say before, you have a disease. You do not have a disability. You're pretty strong in making that differential. Yeah, okay, that works.
Yeah.
And just that you have a disease and not a disability. So A, I guess, go on with that, and then B, how do you define disease and disability?
Well, and that's the thing, and at first it was on the one application where it asked, and this is what it says, it's how do I know if I have a disability? It's giving you kind of pointers as you're filling out this application. It said, you are considered to have a disability if you have a physical or mental impairment or medical condition that substantially limit a major life activity, or if you have a history or record of such an impairment or medical condition. Disabilities include, but are not limited to, and it bullets out a list of blindness, deafness, cancer, diabetes, epilepsy, autism, cerebral palsy, HIV, AIDS, and it goes down. Multiple sclerosis, just by the disease itself, is identified as a disability. How can I hide from that one? Because on my resume it says that we were inducted into the National MS Society Hall of Fame in 2015.
Something to be incredibly proud of.
I mean, I'm incredibly proud of that, and the advocacy work, and when I need to take time off of work or take vacation time really to go out to Washington, D.C. to the National MS Society's Public Policy Conference or down to the state capitol for MS Action Day.
Yes.
How can we do that? But I guess my question is, for all this time that we spend trying to hide like levels of disability, I mean, I know that I had to go to my employer when things got overwhelming and get request accommodations under the ADA for a speak to text because I couldn't type. I'm a writer and an editor, and I couldn't type as quickly as I needed to, and that was there. And so, but I then again, I have a disease. I don't have a disability because I always say, we have a van with an accessible, a handicap plate on it because you're in a wheelchair, and we have that. I don't. My car does not have an accessible
Like a
plate.
handicap,
Yeah,
like a
handicap plate.
handicap parking plate.
Yeah.
And, I had a caregiver who once said that she thought it was interesting that the people with disabilities, i.e., the people like me that use motorized scooter or wheelchair, even the people that push in a wheelchair, they get the close parking spots, but it's the people with disabilities like Dan that, and it does, there again, does he have a disability? Where maybe he's tired and his foot's dragging a little and he could use that wheelchair placard, but he doesn't use that. And so she questioned, why is it people who can ride in a chair to get into the grocery store, why do they get the closer spots? But it's the people who, she just questioned why, and she wasn't trying to be rude. She made a good point. Why do I need the closer spot to get into the grocery store? But then she took me out in the winter, and she understood that with a wheelchair barreling through feet of snow like we get here in Michigan, that to get that closer spot that is cleaned off and that gives me enough space for the ramp for my van. That's why I had that handicap placard. But you make a good point, Dan. You don't have that unless you're with me and you're not using it for yourself.
But then is that fair then, that just even by the notion of having multiple sclerosis, that's saying that I have that I'm disabled, that I have a disability?
Well, you have a progressive neurologic, I've never learned, is it neurological or neurologic? So if you have a strong stance on that, please shoot us an email or tweet us something which way it should be. But because you have a progressive illness, should you say, yes, I have a disability?
But does that then set a red flag up right away with a prospective employer? Is it like it's almost like, is that baggage I carry into a new relationship?
That's a good question. I mean, like you met a woman who also has that baggage, and I was like, hey, 2 bags are better than 1, But that's a good question. And do you disclose that with employers? I don't know the answer, Dan.
Well, and this is what I mean. We're asking everybody out there, if you're listening, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, shoot us an email at digmand@msn.com or go to our website at danandjenniferdigmand.com and just chime in on this to let us know, what are your thoughts? I mean, if you have multiple sclerosis and you still can work, is it fair to have MS listed just out of the gate, just as an illness, as a disease, to be a disability?
Well, and the reality is, so you continue working, let's say, and then you work until you can't work anymore, and then you go on Social Security, or thank God for safety nets like that, but then you can't make any more money. And not to be money grubbing woman, because that's not what I'm trying to, that's not the point I'm making, but is your potential stymied because you have multiple sclerosis. Because you potentially, I mean, look at me. I was in my early 20s and I could not walk. I could not transfer myself to the toilet. I needed help, and I, thank God again because of the safety nets of the Michigan My Choice Medicaid waiver program. I am able to get caregivers who will come into my house and help me with activities of daily life, like using the restroom or getting ready, changing my clothes, because I no longer can change my clothes without assistance. I can no longer cook food by myself unless I'm making like a bologna sandwich, let's be honest, and chips.
That actually sounds good.
Yeah, doesn't it? And so because of this disease, that has changed that potential for me. And what happens if you say, yes, I have a disability? Is your potential, is your working future, is that gone?
I mean, potentially, but is not everybody's potential? I mean, it's like you say, like, one car accident away from being disabled, and
Right.
that's an identity that everybody at some point in their time could have.
That of disability,
You
of
could be
being
disabled. And so everyone has that potential. Why am I automatically thrown into that category?
Because you have a disease that's progressive.
Is that fair? Is that okay? I suppose fair to the employer, but is that fair to us living with multiple sclerosis that we're automatically categorized?
Did we not get served a crap sandwich the day we were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis? And I'm not trying to be negative or a Debbie Downer, but I mean, that is kind of the question that you're asking. I mean, we take medicine that's ridiculously expensive. We could potentially have chronic health issues that starting the day after we're diagnosed. I mean, granted, look at you. You've been living almost nearly 20 years since you were diagnosed. You're still walking, and you were working, and you still drive, and you're married, and we have a lovely home, and
Well, or then let me ask this. Riddle me this, Batman.
but I don't know if we're getting anywhere. I'm sorry, listeners, but we're having a really
We're asking, and please again chime in on this when you go visit us on Twitter, DanJenDig. That's our handle. I mean, let us know what you think. That it's like. I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, this is my question then. Am I the problem child? That should I embrace the disability? Should I embrace that? I mean, and they say, okay, well, I should deny it or try and stay away from that as much as I could. But at the same time, is that where, we talk a lot too with things about having an invisible disability, and I don't want people to know. I mean, obviously. Or should I just be more like that? Should I go to the Secretary of State and apply for an accessible handicap plate?
But then that begets the question, which came first, the disability or acknowledging the disability? Did I get worse because I said, yes, I have the secondary progressive form of the disease, and recognizing and accepting and acknowledging that, did it just get a little worse? Whereas if I would have said, no, I'm relapsing, remitting, dadgummit, and I'm going to keep walking. And I mean, I don't want to say I gave up, but darn this crap sandwich, that it forces you to look at your life. Like, I worked really hard going to physical therapy. God bless my PT, Heather. Bless my parents who would walk with me in the middle of the night because I got strong at night because I'm a freak like that. And I could walk with my walker. I could walk 50 or 100 feet. And, you know, I've worked really hard to try not to let this disease get, quote unquote, the best of me. But now I look back and I'm like, did I really work as hard as I think I did? And I know I did.
Yeah, I'm sure you
But
did.
it's still that sandwich that's making me, forcing me to ask those questions. And I hate to think that you someday will have to ask those questions to yourself.
Well, and I think that's where those of us with multiple sclerosis, all of us, it's like, then it's always for me then, am I at a point of denial? Because that's a reality, and we've talked about this on the show before, and I've written about it, just in terms of, points where I was getting to where I would go across campus for an assignment as a writer, and I would have to stop and rest walking back to the office. It's like a good like 7, 5, 6, 7 blocks, distance, and I'd have to walk. I'd have to stop because I was tired. And I'd say that, yeah, it was the MS, but at the same time, you still keep doing it. But it's like, am I in denial? And what point does denial become? Yeah, you don't know if you're giving in or you're denying or you're accepting. I mean, these are the things that we all have to wrestle with.
And I wish that someone had a magic ball or a magic wand to say, yes, you're doing the right thing. You're accepting the disease. You're not giving up. You're moving forward. And I think we're moving forward really well, and we always have in our entire 12 years of married life. But this is a stumbling block right now where we're just like, what do we do? How do we move forward?
Yeah, and I think that's where your smooth sailing and everything, but life changes, and so then it's but then it's the question. This is the reality when I'm applying for another job and hoping to get a new employer to truly take a chance on me, or just feel
Never
that,
mind. This is the question, and I don't want to complicate things, but you are in middle age.
oh, stop.
I'm serious, babe. And it's just like,
I'm a seasoned veteran.
you're a
is what I am.
seasoned veteran, but does age become an issue? I don't know. Does the fact that you have multiple sclerosis become an issue? Will you face discrimination? What will the Americans with Disability Act do for you? And these are all really good questions that unfortunately we've been forced to look at, and I'm not being dramatic, but we've lost a little sleep about this because we're trying to figure this out.
Well, it's just like, yeah, where do you go next? What's the next move? And I think that, for that job, because I think now there's been I think at total there's been 4 jobs I've applied for where it has the question of disabilities, and the reality is I'm upfront and honest about everything. I had that job interview, and I'm just very honest about a couple things in terms of me being a caregiver for somebody with multiple sclerosis. It's like, these are our realities, and it's like, I would rather be honest and not have to defend or backpedal or lie or twist a story.
And I think, knowing the community, the people that we both know in the multiple sclerosis community as well as we do, we're not flamboyant and screaming, oh, I have MS, I have MS. We acknowledge the disease, but we're all respectful of our privacy, and we don't want to advertise the challenges that we live with every day. And does having to disclose multiple sclerosis, you have to let people into the reality of your life a little more than you want to. I mean, you're a pretty private guy.
Which is interesting, because we're advocates, we blog, we write, we talk, we do all this.
We put our faces out there everywhere.
We're everywhere, but I think it's just, there are limits. It's like, there are just certain things you protect that it's just like, it is nobody else's business. But, it's just on the surface, just factually, yes, indeed, I do have multiple sclerosis. It's a disease for me. It's not a disability. But is it a disability? And I think that's where, how do we define the disability beyond the disease?
And that's why we would love some feedback from those of you that are listening. And I'm sure you may think that the hosts of these shows have all the answers, and potentially the other wonderful hosts out there on the MS&Me Radio Network, they do have a ton of answers. But right now, Dan and Jennifer Digman are full of questions, and we're looking for some feedback from you, because this is a conversation that we need to have. We in the MS community, there's strength in numbers, and if we can support each other, and you all will help us, and we will just continue talking about what we're going through.
And because then is it a campaign where those of us in the MS community need to rally the troops to get MS off of that list of disabilities? Or because just thinking of what that's like for a newly diagnosed person, where it's just how does that set you up to say, it's just oh well, I'm going to have a disability. And it's just the number of people, I think I saw the stat yesterday that only a third of the people with multiple sclerosis use assistive devices. However, that's where it opens the door to there's more than just physical disabilities.
Right.
We're just opening so many cans of worms.
So many cans of worms, so many questions, and we just really wanted to bring this to you because Dan and I are going through this together, and it's nice to be able to talk and have you all listen to our stories.
But thank you all for listening, and please check in with us at danandjenniferdigman.com, email at digmand@msn.com, or send us something on Twitter at danjendig. Let us know what you think on MS as a disability, automatically with an employer. But thank you again for listening to A Couple Takes on MS. This is Dan Digman.
And Jennifer Digman.
Thanks to Blue Giraffe Kid for composing our theme music. Thanks to MS&Me Radio Network for having us. Have a great week. We'll check in with you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.